Today, we have some federal agencies partially lifting their hiring freeze, and then you have other agencies leaning heavy into artificial intelligence to replace some of their workers. And when you take a look at the courts, for some reason, President Trump keeps losing. What's happening here? Let's get into it. The VA recently dropped its third update to the hiring freeze exemption list. This unfreezes over 100 positions. Not jobs, positions. This is well over 100 jobs. It's thousands of jobs. This is a big deal because we're still under the hiring freeze that goes all the way out to July 15th. But the VA, they need certain people. They're not letting them go. The spotlight's on 9 key roles at the Veterans Crisis Line, VCL. They added silent monitors who coach hotline responders and social services assistants, SSAs, who call 911 when a veteran's in crisis. The president of the union said, if I'm a crisis responder and a veteran calls me saying he's going to end his life and he's refusing to put the gun away, I reach out to an SSA for assistance with getting a welfare check completed. Without enough SSAs, responders are stretched thin. And the VCL, they receive about 60,000 calls from veterans a month. That's a lot of calls. They're calling about suicidal ideations. They're calling about homelessness. They're calling about pain that they have in their life. So it's a big deal that they have enough SSAs to deal with it. But there's a catch because once the hiring freeze lifts, there's a rule that you can only hire one person for every 4 that leave your agency. How's that going to work with the Veteran Crisis Line? It's not going to work. It doesn't even make sense. How are you going to hire one responder for every 4 responders that leave? The Veteran Crisis Line would be having a crisis at that point. Also, the VA is having trouble retaining their responders. There's one responder that recently reported that he tried to take the Deferred Resignation Program, the DRP, but he was refused. Just like a lot of medical professionals, they were refused as well. The VCL did get a break in March. Many had an exemption from the VA's return to office mandate. So many worked remotely. Nearby VA facilities, they didn't have space for them. On a positive note, the VA has reported a pretty good year so far. Since January, they reduced the disability claims by 25%. That's significant. That's a lot. That's probably close to 100,000 claims they were able to close out. But my question is, what happened to the claims? Were they approved or were they rejected? Because I think that helps with context. If you're rejecting a bunch of them, man, you can just plow right through them, right? One of the sore spots for veterans when they're getting out of the military, they're interacting with VA and they're trying to get their disability claim rolling. And a lot of times they don't have enough evidence or they're being told that their claim isn't justified. So that's a huge pain point with the veteran community. But not everybody's happy. Some people are worried. 14,000 VA employees applied for the Deferred Resignation Program by May 16th, and very few are qualifying, especially in the VHA because that's largely where the medical professionals are at. And if they need you, if your job is directly connected to veterans' well-being or veterans' benefits, they're not going to get rid of you despite you wanting to go. The reason why I believe so many people want to escape, there's this exodus of people trying to leave, is because the VA announced they're getting rid of 80,000 jobs. So if your organization announced 80,000 people were trying to get rid of them, you probably rethink your job security. You probably think there's better opportunities out there. Now, the federal government, they've been hiring. Even though there's a hiring freeze right now, if you go on usajobs.gov, look at places like DHS, Department of Defense, there's over 5,000 open jobs. Because without these jobs, public service fails. Let's shift to another agency now. Let's look at the Social Security Administration, the SSA. Over at the SSA, they got some ambitious goals. They want to reduce wait times. Everyone can get on board with that plan. You call over there, on average, there's a 30-minute wait time. That's what was reported in January. People were waiting on average 30 minutes. Some people were waiting over an hour in some cases, but they want to drop that down to single digits, 9 minutes or less. That's the goal. And how are you going to do that when you have a workforce right now that's historically understaffed? Well, you guessed it, artificial intelligence. The commissioner of the SSA, a former Wall Street executive, he bragged by saying, I was using AI before it was AI. He's got some big goals. He wants to cut a 6 million backlog and he wants to boost the service in the SSA. They've already automated $15 billion in retroactive payments for over 2 million people. But there's still a 360,000 complex case backlog that needs work. It needs manual work. He said, I want people to know that every transaction that's done on the phone or in a field office can actually be done on the web. I don't think that's exactly true because there are still some reasons you have to physically walk into an office and talk to somebody. Like when you get a kid or a minor an SSA card, the kid has to be in the office. When you are verifying identity in some situations, you have to be in an office. But there's many other reasons you can just go online. I think the real reason to lean into AI is because the staffing is at a 50-year low. AI is also pretty impressive. You have other federal agencies out there that are using it actively, and the ones that are not using it, they're studying, they're researching, they're trying to find use cases. They want to use it, especially with the anticipated layoffs that were supposedly coming. They're currently paused right now, but they could be coming any month now. So agencies are exploring that option. And I was thinking, I've done a few jobs in the federal government, and I was thinking, could AI replace me in my tasks that I was doing on a day-to-day basis? And the answer is largely yes. A lot of the stuff when it comes to analyzing data on spreadsheets in databases, it can do that. When it comes to reading and researching a report, it can do that as well. It can create graphs and charts. It can do a lot of it if you have the right prompts. And the stuff that it cannot do, you can teach it to do it. So I'm not saying it could replace 100%, not at this point, but a large percent, a scary large percent. Okay, let's talk about Trump's courtroom chaos. Stanford recently crunched the numbers, and it shows that President Trump has been losing 96% of the rulings in federal district courts. Now, I know what you're going to say. These are just political activists pretending to be judges. But it's not just with the Democratic judges, it's also with the conservative judges, the Republican judges. So 72% of the losses are through Republican judges, 80% are through Democratic judges. And this man doesn't like losing. He's all about win, win, win. So why all the losses? The big reason is that Trump's pushing the biggest expansion of executive power ever. He's been trying to grab control of Congress, grab control of the courts. He's even tried to tweak what the 14th Amendment says. He's trying to do all this by himself. Now, judges, they don't swear an oath to the office of the presidency. They swear an oath to the Constitution. So they're going to follow the law. That's what's in the foremost of their minds is the law, not what's politically advantageous in the moment. Now, President Trump is saying, well, the judges are going against the people's will. And that's got a lot of people fired up to the point that they're making threats towards the judges. But this might not last. The legal cases can and will climb up to the appeal courts and then ultimately to the Supreme Court in most of these cases. And what's there in the Supreme Court? You guessed it, it's a conservative majority. Most of the judges there were replaced by conservative politicians, conservative presidents. So that means he could potentially end up winning some of these in the long run. Now, the big one I had my eye on is the RIF pause. And this thing is huge. The RIF pause is going to impact hundreds of thousands of people in federal agencies all across the government. There's some estimates, 6, 7, 800,000 people could have their jobs taken from them, could be kicked out on the street because of the RIFs. Now, what's going to probably end up happening, maybe the RIFs continue at a certain point, maybe they do not. If they continue, what I could see plausibly happening, what makes sense to me, is you allow some of the RIFs to go through, if they make sense. Because if you remember the judge, when they were looking at the RIFs, they saw the plans on their desk. She was looking at them, and a lot of the RIF plans made no sense. In fact, it showed it would impact public service negatively. So if you can make a case in your RIF plan that, hey, this isn't going to impact the public service at all, this in fact removes duplicative jobs, then yeah, those can go through. But if you're just trying to cut people for the sake of cutting people, for arbitrarily just removing tens of thousands of jobs, I don't think the courts are going to be okay with that. And many people, they're waiting for this decision because of the severance pay. You could have thousands of people receive severance, and that equates to $80,000, $90,000, up to $100,000, even exceeding $100,000, depending on how you do the calculation on how many years that federal employee has and what GS grade and how much do they make every year. That's a lot of money, and people are waiting for that decision to see what are they going to do next. Agencies are also waiting because they want to know, are they consolidating offices? Do they have planned contingencies for when those people leave the office? So those are all big questions. And there's this mentality, there's this optics from the political side. You want to shrink the government. You want the government to be small because that's what the people who voted you into office, that's what they want. They blame a good percentage of their problems on government overreach. So you want it smaller. But if we placed you in the position of leading that agency, where you start to have an understanding of the functions your agency is responsible for, and you can clearly see if you cut this office, if you cut 1,000 here, 1,000 there, you can make the connection in your head how that impacts public service negatively. You're not going to want that responsibility lying on your shoulders, just for the sake of scoring political points, just to make sure that some politicians get reelected during the next election cycle. You're not going to do it. A lot of people are not going to do it. Now, some of them are going to do it, and there might be fallout from that decision. You might see public backlash, and you're already seeing it in some situations. You're hearing about congressional representatives going back home, and they're being met with protests. They're being screamed at because the political actions that are being taken, they're getting rid of contracting jobs. They're getting rid of defense contractors. They're getting rid of federal employees. They're responsible for these tariffs having a negative impact on the economy. So there's a lot left to be seen. In addition to all of this, we have a big, beautiful parade to prepare for. If you didn't know, June 14th, that's the date. That's President Trump's birthday. And it just so happens we're going to have a huge parade. So big of a parade, so big and beautiful that we need people to start teleworking again. So if you could go ahead and telework for the next 3 weeks, that'd be great. That's what people are being told right now. The same people that were told they can't telework because apparently nobody can get any work done at their house, in their home office. It's impossible, except if there's a parade or if there's inclement weather. Then you can telework. If you want to know more about that, check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.